Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Osim, for joining us from KSA. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Welcome, Betty from Huber. I think we are colleagues as well, Betty. I'm also at Interlink. So welcome to see you here today. Just a few housekeeping before I introduce Professor Rizzo. Please keep your mics muted and videos off till the end of the session. You will have time at the end to interact with our presenter today and talk to her. Meanwhile, if there's any activities or any questions, you can connect in the chat box with us. Thank you so much. So, welcome, Dr. Rizzo, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you as ever. And Professor Rizzo is a Fulbright, a dedicated teacher trainer with a degree in linguistics and an MA in TESOL. She is pursuing her doctorate in TESOL at St. Andrews University. Bravo. And
thank you.
Extensive teaching experience in Bolivia and in USA. She promotes autonomy, motivation, and critical thinking. And Beatrice has presented at numerous national and international conferences. We are honored to have you today with us.
Thank you so much, my friend, Maria. It is an honor for me to be here working with you. It's always amazing. And thank you to all of you for being here. I hope we learn a lot from each other. So I think we shall begin. As my very good friend, Dr. Zaid, mentioned, I'm part of TESOL International. I'm working part-time at 2 different universities in my country. And thank the Lord, I'm pursuing my doctoral degree at San Andreas University. And we are having a conference in which it's an honor also to have Maria Zaid with us presenting next week. Right now, I would like to share a project that is in course. It's still happening. And I wanted to call it Perceptions from the perspective of teachers and students of including generative AI tools feedback in academic writing at a higher education university. Right now, and I want you to apologize, I'm not at home. I'm in a uni, which is a very high place in my country. And I'm having a little bit difficulty breathing, so I'm going to ask you to be patient with me. I want to explain the title. One of my passions is to work with academic writing and helping Bolivian students to improve their abilities when they write. We have the problem, and I don't know if the same problem that you have in your country, that students do not really learn how to write at school. They are asked to write at university level, but they are not really taught. So I developed a process in which students, instead of working in writing isolatedly and alone, they have to work in groups. That is one of the things. But what happened with feedback in this process, that was something that was missing in my idea. So how do we work with this? And I was advised, I was suggested, many people said that you have to use rubrics. I designed the rubrics. I found rubrics on internet that I used, but still that was something that was weak. So I decided to perform an action research project. And action research is something cyclical, and I'm going to share with you the first cycle. Now, because of the situation right now, we have gone back to have in-person classes. Sometimes, depending on the situation, we still have some virtual classes, so we have to move from one to the other, especially now that we are having an environmental crisis. There are way too many forest fires, jungle fires, and the quality of the air is very bad. So there are weeks in which we have to go back to virtual classes, and there are some cases in which we are teaching in a hybrid environment. That means that we have students in the classroom, but also we have students that are at home, probably because they want to protect themselves. So in classes, we are already we are wearing masks and we have eye problems. So right now in my country, we are dealing like going from one environment to the other. So I have experimented this in a situation like that. Also, I want to explain the process that I'm sure you know, the process of academic writing. It goes, organizing your ideas, discussing well the meaning of the topic, doing your research, outlining after brainstorming ideas, and then you write your first draft. I'm teaching 2 courses. They are called Oral and Written Communication at the Higher University of San Andres. And course 1, students learn to write academic paragraphs. And in course 2, they learn to write academic essays. Now, I teach them this. Let's go for the planning, the drafting, the revising, and editing. But again, something essential in this process is how we assessed the work that the students are doing from the very beginning to the very end of the process, and how they get feedback. Feedback that is useful, feedback that is very objective, feedback that is going to help them improve, and feedback that is, above all, personalized. So I needed to find a way to make things better, especially because sometimes I have classes. Last semester I had 84 and 75 students in my courses. This semester I have like less students, but still I have 54 in one and 32 in the other. And that's a lot. That's a lot. So how can you provide personalized feedback if you have so many students? That's something that was instead of finding a better word, that was really bothering me, I was feeling bad about that. So after thinking and trying one thing and the other, I decided to include generative artificial intelligence tools, GenAI. I didn't want to get rid of the rubric because for me, the rubric tells the student what they have to do and how they are going to be evaluated. So combining the 2 things, I wanted to know if that helped the students improve their student writing proficiency, if they learn to use the feedback they received, because many times I felt that I told them what they had to improve, but it was not really being useful for them, and how comfort they felt using that. I've had some negative experiences, like students going to ChatGPT and sending me their paragraphs or their essays, and I hated that. Like I still hate it, like a lot. So how comfortable they feel with that, and how comfortable I feel with that. So I needed to find something at my university, a process, a kind of procedure that was going to be useful for them. It was going to be useful for me, but that I could feel happy with the result and not feeling that my students were cheating or not doing what they were supposed to do and simply not improving at all. I don't know if you follow me. The thing is that something had to be changed, and that's how we teachers begin our research. Yes, something has to be changed. This is the agenda for today. I want to do a small exercise, please, with me. I want you to get a piece of paper, a notebook, something, And after the explanation that I gave you and after presenting my question for you, I want you to write down what questions do you think you have for me or you will have for me at the end of this presentation? And what do you expect from it? What do you want to get? What outcomes would you like to take? So please get a piece of paper, and I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Write down all the questions that you would like me to respond in this scenario, please. Okay? Just 60 seconds. And I'm going to have some Coca-Cola.
You can also use the chat box to write your questions, and we can read it at the end for Professor Rizzo. So if you have any expectations of the session, questions, you can add them now, and we can read it at the end. Thank you.
Yes, you have like 15 more seconds. And try to think of all the questions that may come to your mind. Okay, so to begin with, I made a diagnosis. I wanted to know how comfortable students were while using technology in general. I asked various questions, but this was the most interesting to me. That's why I'm sharing it with you. Majority of the students said that they are neutral in terms of I really like it and I don't really like it. Number one was they were not comfortable at all. And number 5 was I am very comfortable using technology. And check the differences. And majority of the students are like in the middle. They don't have something against or they don't have something in favor of using technology. They also answered questions like how frequently you use technology, computers, cell phones, and accessing internet and stuff like that. This was one of the last questions of the diagnosis that I made before beginning this project. If they use generative AI tools. This was an anonymous research with convenient sampling because I'm using the students that I am assigned in my courses. But what surprised me is that even though majority of them they don't feel like very, very comfortable, they use Gen AI tools and they use them frequently. Yes. You can see that's more than 50% they said they used it. And then I asked them, what for you use them? Then they said for grammar, to check the spelling, to check punctuation, sometimes to find definitions, as translators. So they use it. They have some familiarity with it. What I found out then when I talked to some of them in an semi-structured interview is they said, we just use it like there's something that I need to do and then I go to ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. But there's no focus, there's no a real reason, something like very clear and very objective for using them. And I said, okay, my project has to bring something objective for these students so they are going to feel comfortable with it. Very briefly, I would like to explain how we work together. First, we work collaboratively. Since I have so many students, my students usually work in groups of 4 or 5. And when I began this project, these were my specific objectives. First, knowing that they don't know how to write academically, even in Spanish, I wanted to learn that. And included intentionally a free writing stage and self and peer corrections. The purpose of self and peer corrections was like, they have to read their part of the essay, their part of the paragraph, they have to read their writing, they have to correct it. And then they have to exchange it with other students and students have to give them feedback. So they have to correct it again before they submit it to me. And at the same time that they are learning writing, they have to, work and develop all the 4 skills, including vocabulary and grammar. So when they are talking to each other, they are listening, they are speaking, they have to read, and of course, they have to write. I worked via thread project. So I don't do writing in just one class or 1 week. We do it over a long period of time, and we go step by step, stage by stage. Depending on the number of the students or the genre that I am teaching, it could be a short one or it could be a longer one. But it's a process, and each part of the process has to be assessed and given feedback. As an example, imagine how the process goes. Just an example. Imagine that students in their textbook are learning how to write fables. So I will do some scaffolding, probably following the text, like there are narrations, they have reading activities, they discuss fables, but I would bring other material, like probably more close to them. So we have some modern fables. Let's compare them to traditional fables. Let's watch videos. So what I'm bringing is like they're going to feel strong about the narrative. And I try to get their previous knowledge. So I know that when at the school, secondary, they learn how to write and analyze fables because it's part of the program. So I ask them, okay, you learn this in school. So what is this? What is that? So I make them realize that they have some experience, and we hope that they remember that. Yes, and if they don't remember, they are going to learn it while we are talking about that. Then this is the next step, working with the rubric. I create a rubric for every specific type of genre that we are working. For example, when we work with writing fables, I created this rubric, and I was very specific in the criteria that I wanted to use. Like we said, the first thing that we are going to decide is the title. So my rubric contained specific details how the title was supposed to be written. So fables have moral. So what is the moral? How did you work with providing ideas, brainstorming ideas to share in this case? Also, I would like to know to work with your outline. How did you organize your ideas, the characters, everything? So all of these things are included in the rubric. Because my students work collaboratively, also I design a group work rubric. And again, with lots of details. So these rubrics are based on what I want my students to perform in my class. I used to find rubrics on the internet or ask my colleagues for their rubrics, but I found out that although they were very nice, well designed, they didn't really fit my necessities, what I wanted my students to develop in my classes. So I experimented, asking first Gemini and then ChatGPT to create rubrics for me. I found out that ChatGPT works in certain things better than other generative AI tools. So I experimented. Copilot, I didn't like it. Gemini, I didn't like it. Gemini is good for practicing speaking. So I decided to work with ChatGPT. When designing my rubrics and asking ChatGPT to help me, I provided the description of my students. They are EFL learners, the level of English that they are supposed to be developed here, what my learning objectives are, what I want the rubric to assess. In case of writing, if it's narrative, descriptive, etc., etc., etc. So before asking ChatGPT to do something for me, I decided on all of these things. So it was going to fulfill exactly what I wanted. Then I created the prompt. And after ChatGPT created the rubric, I revised it and I made changes. Sometimes I made the changes myself. Other times I asked ChatGPT to improve its own work. So this is a model, more or less, a model of the prompt that I have designed. I try to be very, very specific and give as many details as possible. So I am going to receive a nice product from ChatGPT. So I want a rubric that has the form of a table. And then I say they are EFL learners, this is the level, and they are going to write this and they are going to write that. So when I design my prompt, I give as many details as possible. So ChatGPT is going to create something that really fulfills my needs and my expectations. And this is an example of one that ChatGPT created for me. Now, these are things: topic and focus, organization, chronological order, length of sentences. These are things that I ask my students, I teach my students to write when they are writing, for example, a narrative paragraph. So I made sure that ChatGPT created a rubric that really fit what I have taught my students to do. And I always ask to have 4 levels or 5 levels, and I determine, like, there is one level that I expect my students to have. That I tell them, this is what I want from you. The one on the left is for the overachievers, that they are not happy with less than 100. Passing score is 61 to 75, and the other are like the students that never work. Yeah, I don't know how you do it in your country, but that's those are the numbers that we use. Now, when I am revising the rubric that I have received, that the ChatGPT has produced, I revise the criteria one by one. I make sure that the levels of performance are clear and they are exactly saying what I want. I pay attention to the details and ensure that they are appropriate for the genre that I am writing and for the environment, my context that I am writing, that my students are working at. For example, I know that many teachers, they said it doesn't matter how many sentences or how many words the students write in a paragraph. To me, however, in academic writing, I know that they cannot write too short paragraphs. So I said minimum 8 to 10 is ideal. If you write 12, also acceptable, but less than that or more than that is not really appropriate. So I make sure that my rubric is fulfilling, for example, that is something that I tell in my classes, that maybe for other teachers this is not relevant. Also, I make sure that my rubric includes no Spanish interference, because my students tend to use, they tend to modify the words and invent new words. They are Spanish words, but they modify it to English. So I emphasize something like that. The first time I asked ChatGPT to create a rubric, it didn't include that. So I said, no, that has to be part of my rubric. So please include it. And I asked ChatGPT to modify it. So I make all the changes that are necessary for me to be happy, for me to say, okay, this is a rubric that is going to be really helpful for my students. And the advantage of doing this, it's still your work. ChatGPT is just a tool. The advantage is that ChatGPT is going to do it a little bit faster, that you have to write it again and write it again. Yes? It's your work. It's not ChatGPT's work. You are just using the help of the tool. So, going back to the process of writing, you have the rubric, and the first thing we do in my class is read the rubric. Do you understand it? Do you have any questions? And I always recommend use the rubric to guide what you are going to do. So students negotiate a meaning, they exchange outlines, they get it, and said, okay, if it's a long essay, then each of you is going to write one paragraph, and then you're going to put it together and then correct what you have done. But all the time in the process, they are assessing their work and they are receiving feedback using the rubric. So I don't know if this is correct. Okay, the rubric tells me that it has to be chronological order, a spatial order, that I have to have arguments in favor, arguments against. So the rubric is the constant reference. I am not with them when they are at home doing their homework, right? So the rubric has to be the reference. And I always tell them if they don't like the score that I give or the feedback that I provide, I said, okay, if you're going to argue with me, argue with the rubric in hand. And if they have not used it, they cannot complain. But if they have used it, of course, they have the right to say, no, I think I've done this, and please check it again. So they are, in a way, forced until it becomes a routine for them to work with the rubric. I decided to do something else. And I know my students had lots of mechanical mistakes, like punctuation, spelling. They are not accustomed to go to the dictionary and check. So I decided to find free checkers, free AI tools for them to improve those small parts. So I found this free grammar checker, this free punctuation checker, and the one that I said, I prefer you to use this one. You can use any, but you can use the three. But we are going to work with Language Tool. Language Tool, you can use it for free. You can find the extension to put it in your Google Chrome. So you just click on it and automatically going to help you. But how I use it with my students. So they have to provide everything they do into a Google slide presentation so I can see it. No? Then, after they have created the first draft of their paragraph and they have self-corrected and peer-corrected, and they said, okay, we are happy with what we have done. This is like, to say it in a way, this is the limit of our knowledge. We think it's okay. So then I asked them to go to Language Tool. Go to Language Tool and paste your paragraph. This is one of the paragraphs that my students provided. And they went to Language Tool, they pasted their paragraph, and you can see here, it's showing them the things that they have to correct. Now, there is a free version and there is a paid version. This is the free version. And I know my students are not going to pay to use that. But it's telling them things that probably they forgot, like Monday. Monday has to be with capital letters. There are other things. We wrote a descriptive paragraph about Alacitas, which is a traditional fair in my country. It's something very Bolivian, very traditional. And there are words that come from Aymara and Quechua that are native languages that cannot be translated because we don't have even an equivalent in Spanish. We're not going to find an equivalent in English. So they have to maintain the same word. So I tell them, use your critical thinking skills. If you think this is okay, so don't change it just because Language Tools is telling you. If you think that, yeah, you should have corrected it, you forgot that Monday is with capital letter, then correct it. But don't accept all the suggestions just because. Once they do that, they have to copy that in their Google slide presentation, and then they do one more thing. I tell them, go to ChatGPT, open it, and then use the rubric that we have used and paste it on ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT doesn't accept tables or charts. So it was a little bit extra work for me to transform the table that I asked to produce, because I really liked it, and transform it in this type, in a Google Doc, this type of format. So I had the criterion, I had the levels. It was the same rubric, but it has to be in a form like this. So students copy this into ChatGPT. ChatGPT is going to produce something, or sometimes says, okay, what do you want me to do with it? It depends, quotation marks, on its mood, I think. So after the students copy it, the next thing that they have to do is, my instruction says, now copy this prompt. They have to copy the prompt, this narrative paragraph, blah, blah, blah. And after that, they have to copy the paragraph they produced. And check that my prompt says, use the previous rubric. So they pasted the rubric, and then they paste this prompt, and they paste the paragraph. and ChatGPT is going to produce a feedback. I ask my students to paste the feedback in their Google Slides presentations. And ChatGPT is going to tell them, like, item by item, criterion by criterion, how well they did. No? So the topic and the focus, something that I included. The topic is clear, focusing on the first class and the introduction of Ms. Eraso, because I asked them to write about the first day of classes that I had with me. So they were nice to include me. And I asked permission from one of my groups to copy this. You see, all the criterion, every single criterion that I provided, ChatGPT mentioned it here, including the part of vocabulary, grammar, if there was a Spanish interference or not, everything, right? And then I also asked ChatGPT, my prompt said, provide the strengths. So in this case, they said there is content and relevance, there is good structure, there is a personal touch. So everything that, according to ChatGPT, was strong. Also, the weaknesses. So yeah, if you worked on this, but there is something that you have to improve. Grammar and punctuation, verb tense, etc., etc., etc. So when students read this, they have a very detailed feedback of every single aspect that they had to pay attention to. So after my students do this, I ask them to read it together as a group, and they have to make a decision. Do we agree with it or not? And then we said, your vocabulary is limited. Students, they say, no, we think our vocabulary is appropriate. We don't think we had to make changes to this. Or yes, probably we could add synonyms for this part. Yes, we agree. We didn't have consistency in the tenses that we used. Everything had to be in the past, and we have a mix. We have past, and now we have present. So I asked them to include that reflection. And once they have decided what they accept from ChatGPT feedback, the next step is, like, using that feedback, they have to correct their paragraph. Now, before, some beautiful students understood that, okay, I take my paragraph and I ask ChatGPT correct it. Of course, ChatGPT produced a different paragraph, not exactly what they had. So I did not accept it. I said, no, you have to use, again, your critical thinking skills, your knowledge, and you have to improve that paragraph. Once they did that, the peer correction, the self-correction, they send it to me. Now, there is an advantage here. If I have 84 students and I have to read and correct and assess and give feedback to 84 students, that's a lot of work. But they have self-corrected it. They have gone through peer correction. They have gone through language tool. They have gone through ChatGPT. My work is less, definitely less. So I can focus on more important things. After I give them my feedback, so they have corrected, then we can publish it, and then we reflect on the process. One more time, we are working with assessment and feedback all over the process based on the rubric that we have created from the very beginning and with the help of ChatGPT. To make my life a little bit easier, I tend to give oral feedback. I use different tools. I used to use Kaizen, and now I use Vocaroo. And I use my rubric to make references to the feedback that I am giving them. The advantage of giving oral feedback is one that you can, when you write, it takes more time than when you speak. When you speak, you can give more details. And students are practicing listening too, and they can listen to you as many times as they want. So it's kind of beneficial. When we go to the publishing, I ask my students not to show me only the final part. I ask them to show me everything, like the first draft they produced, their homework assignments, how they corrected the stuff. If we are doing it online or in a hybrid, we use Padlet. But they have to show everything that they have done during the process, including the ChatGPT. To finish, I asked them to assess each other, how they worked as a group, and also assess the work they have done using the rubric. So we assess our group. We did this very well. Now assess the work of the other group. So they have to use also the rubric and practice with the feedback. I can do this at different stages. I can do it like just at the end if I don't have that much time, or in the middle of the process and at the end of the process, or every single part. We discuss like how it went in the brainstorming and organizing. Did you use the rubric? Did you read the rubric before? When you were drafting, was it helpful? What about the ChatGPT process when you were in the revising section? Was it okay? Was not? And then I asked them to compare. What about the revising and the editing? Like which of the feedback you enjoyed, you liked the most, or you found more useful? Now, the theoretical support of this project is experiential learning cycle that was developed by Kolb in 1994. I don't explain my students the theory. I don't tell them, well, in the academic writing, you have to do the planning, you have to do this, or you have to do that. I explain it at the end, after that they have finished. So the first thing we do is what you see here, that is on the top. It says act. There is a concrete experience. We do it. And I don't give much explanations unless they ask. And I answer the questions when they ask. And then when we are reflecting on what we have done, said, okay, questions like, what did you learn? Did you like the process? Didn't you like the process? What happened with this? What happened with that? After that, I explain the theory, or I explain my beliefs, or I explain my motivations, reasons for doing what we did. So, okay, this is the academic writing. These are the process. I have used language tool for this, and that. I have done this for this, and that. And I said, the rubric, it's my rubric, but I asked ChatGPT for the details. And then we are going to do exactly the same thing now that we are going to learn the argumentative essay or the argumentative paragraph, whatever comes next in my program. So now students know that this is something cyclical, the same as my action research project, that I'm going to repeat this next semester and to compare the details. Now, the last part of my research is how do they feel how I felt, these two different courses. In summary, this is one of the things that my students say. It requires practice. It's not only about writing, that we know that we are learning how to write, but it requires practice to understand how to use the tools. Like one of them said, I used grammar check before in the past, and I found it useful. But I accepted all the corrections that grammar check gave me without noticing that, yeah, there are some things that it's not necessary to correct, that I am right and grammar checker is not right. They also said that the rubric was a good reference. And there was a difference from this semester and other years that I used the rubric. I never insisted as much as I did this semester, like read the rubric, use the rubric. Sometimes I just gave them the rubric and assumed that they were going to use it, which was not the reality. So once they got accustomed to using it, they said, oh, it's a good reference, it really helps. Other students agreed on that you develop your critical thinking skills because they cannot assume that everything that the generative AI tools provide are the things that you have to do and accept. They agreed that they were useful tools, but their work is way more important. And I loved when they said, oh, I found out that ChatGPT is not perfect. Absolutely not. Like ChatGPT can make mistakes, of course, so you are the one that have to decide if that is appropriate or not. Something that a student said is like, if we don't understand the rubric, we cannot understand the feedback we are getting from ChatGPT. Why? Because ChatGPT is not telling them, oh, this is good because it's good, or it's good because we have, these 1,000 models. There is something that they have to be familiar with. So students that didn't read the rubric, like they found ChatGPT very confusing, the feedback from ChatGPT very confusing. So there is a connection there, and there is a guide, and there is a framework for the students to work within. They said they wanted to keep on doing it. Some of them were still very skeptical, so it was not a 100% agreement, but they agreed that they could like use it on their own in the future for other subjects. And this was the most surprising. They preferred my feedback, because although the rubric was a help, language tool was a help, ChatGPT was a help, I spoke the same language as they did, and they understood better what I said. So they said, we prefer your feedback. And I was like, oh, they want me, they need me. It was like very rewarding that they appreciate still my knowledge, right? My own perceptions, it requires careful planning. At the beginning, it could be time consuming. Last semester, I spent hours trying to polish, refine my prompts, refining my rubrics until I was happy with it. But now, this second semester, I have more experience, things were easier. I need to test and pilot and adapt every single time that I'm using it. So last semester it was like testing every module, piloting every module, adapting every module. Now the load of work was like less, but still I found that, oh, I didn't notice that this should be improved, so I improved it for this semester. I loved that it was very personalized. Although my students didn't like the feedback from ChatGPT 100%, it was very personalized. It was exactly what they needed to know specifically for that work. And I have noticed that ChatGPT made less and less negative observations with the time. So it was very personalized. And having 50 students, this was a win-win for me. We worked collaboratively, students with the students, but also students with me. And my work was easier when we understood that we wanted to help each other. They were not here just to pass the course and get a score. I was not just going to classes to get my salary, but we were doing something together. I noticed that my students developed their critical thinking skills, the hots and the lots. I explained that to them, and they assume that say, okay, there's something that we can do better. They are more autonomous now. They know that it's okay to use Gen AI tools for their own learning. And because I am learning, I'm becoming better, I know how the things work, I am saving time. I am saving lots of time. But I have not finished learning. And that's why I know that action research is a cycle. So I have finished my first cycle, and I know that I have to go next year for a second cycle until I feel really confident that I know and I understand what's happening in my class regarding these issues. In the end, I like to finish always with this. We wrote this together, we shared, we helped each other, and we had fun. It was a little bit stressful, but now we have fun because for my students and for me, things make more sense, and our job is easier, each module that pass. So, this would be the last of my presentation. I asked you at the beginning to write some of your questions, and dear Maria suggested that they could use them. Maybe you could write them in the chat. I would like to hear. Number one, have I answered all your questions?
Thank you, Dr. Riza. It was really amazing. And we all use it, but sometimes we don't understand the process, how it can be implemented correctly. So I think you walked us through really in a way that we really need to use it and adapt it correctly. So we have a question where, what are the levels of integrating AI-driven tools within the curriculum?
What are the levels of?
What are the levels of integrating AI-driven tools within the curriculum?
This is the first time that I am doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a decision that I did not make at the beginning of the year. So it was part of my syllabus. I'm being honest. I introduced a more structured way to work with the academic writing in my courses, but assessment was a situation that I couldn't handle. And I attended a conference in which somebody said, you are supposed to include this, and that in your classes, and it has to be done like this. It was not as detailed as something that I have like developed here, but I said, why not? I mean, I could try. And if it doesn't work, I will not do it again. But if it works, so, there is no regulation that we should use it or we should not use it at any of the universities that I work at. Mm-hmm. I kind of like, I have the freedom to use it. And this is the first time that I am introducing Gen AI, like formally with my guidance into my classes.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Yes, so every institution has their own guidelines. They have their own way of integrating in curriculum. So wherever we're working, we need to check that first, the limitations, yes, and to the extent we are allowed. So if you want to open your mic and communicate directly with Professor Rizzo, please do that. Yes, you're allowed to participate using your mic. You can do it now.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. You can open your video as well as if you want to.
What?
You can open your video if you wish to.
Sorry, I'm not ready.
That's all right. Go ahead with your question, please. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is Dr. Hosam Salah. I'm from Egypt, but currently I'm here in KSA in Riyadh. I'm an associate professor in different disciplines from Dr. Rezo and architecture engineering. I'm the head of the quality assurance unit of the college in Dar al University in Riyadh. But actually, I have a certain 7 tips, very shortly, concerning this very fruitful experience from Dr. Rezo. Thank you very much. It's grateful that you let me, alhamdulillah, very happy to figure out or to find someone in some different corner of the earth thinking like me. Actually, today you provided us a very good initiative. In my point of view, this is one of the initiatives that are requested these times to be provided from the instructors and all people who are in charge of the education process. Provide this kind of smart integration. I know this is not the very good one, but it's a very smart one. And we should have a different and various experiences in different cultures to provide this kind of, let me say, catalog of how to control the ChatGPT, not to be controlled with ChatGPT. So thank you for this, and this is my first point, that you let the student to know that the efficient way to deal with ChatGPT is not to let it as an ask and question process. No, it's a conversational process. You're talking to the ChatGPT. You are learning it as it is based on the machine learning, as you know. So it's learning for the student, and the student is learning. So it's an interactive process. This is the first one. The second one, when I asked about the level of integration, I'm talking about the starting from the strategic level. You know, we should have different experiences, different experimental efforts regarding starting from how to create an academic program, then how to develop an existing program, then how to give to enhance the learning outcomes, the graduate attributes, reaching for the classroom and the relation between the student and the instructor in different disciplines, qualitative and quantitative courses. Exactly. It's a huge effort. I think it's our responsibility these times. This is the second one. The third one, Dr. Rezo, I'm sorry to say that I know that you know this well. Now, you said that you were not able to provide the ChatGPT with the table, including the rubrics, so you were enforced to write it down. No, I think you know now that ChatGPT 04, whether the free one or the paid one, mini or the super one, I think now, and I already did this with my student in the graduation project research, I let them to attach a PDF file, including the table of the rubric, so it was read it already. And I let the ChatGPT to read. I said to him, please read this file and summarize it to me. He knew it was a rubric and summarized it to me. Afterwards, I used his answer to make what is accordingly. So I think it was. I hope it's an added value.
Input. Thank you so much. We have another question. So sorry. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. We can move on to the others because we have just 5 minutes left for this webinar to finish. Thank you so much for your input. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have another question. Please go ahead and ask now because we have just 5 minutes left. Thank you so much.
I think Mr. Akabarov.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello. Hey. My question is very short. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, please.
Perfect. My question is very short. Beatrice, what do you think? What is the extent of AI-driven content and materials used in the classroom? What is the extent? Like, what is the limit that we need to stick to? Is there any borderline that we are not supposed to cross? Is there any red flag? So that's my question. Thank you.
Sorry. That's a very good question. And I think you put that limit. Sorry, give me a second, please. I think you have to put that limit. I set the limit with my students when they began sending me their homework done by ChatGPT instead of correcting their homework assignment themselves. So I said, no, we are not going to go that way. So I'm not asking ChatGPT to do the work for you. You have to do your work. I am honest. If I bring them, for example, an article that is like way too high for their level, I use ChatGPT to adapt it for them. I tell them, I have done this. I have used ChatGPT for this. But I'm not saying this is my work, and I'm not presenting as that I have produced it. I have adapted it because I want you to do something with it. So I think you have to decide based on the student's needs, your learning objectives, the purpose of your subject, what the limit should be. It's your decision, I think.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor Rizzo. We have time for just one more question. Fawzia, you can kindly communicate now.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Fawzia. Welcome.
Salam.
Thank you. Thank you to the presenter for this compelling presentation. Just two quick questions. You mentioned in the very beginning that feedback literacy is very important to your students. And afterward, they mentioned that in their perceptions that they have to understand the feedback, the rubric in order to understand the rubric or the feedback from the GPT. So have you ever tried to teach feedback to your students, which is feedback literacy? Yeah. The second question is, have you ever tried to compare your feedback with GPT feedback?
Oh, I have not done that yet. I mean, I have the perception from the students, right? Definitely, in my feedback, I don't say you have to improve the punctuation or the spelling because that's already done. So probably that should be the next step in my action research project. Regarding the first question, I train my students to give and to receive feedback, because giving feedback is like, I think the rubric says that you have to do this, and that, but you have not done this. And sometimes the students feel offended, right? So I teach them, you have to be open-minded. You have to ask questions, sit down together, explain and ask questions, as many questions as possible, like we are friends. We practice that. And it's something that I've been doing like for 3 or 4 years now, teaching them how to give and to receive feedback, and that it has to be objective and not personal, and they have to be open-minded and say, okay, she's not attacking me. It is my work that has to be improved. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, just the last one, and I will leave. I'm sorry. Just your students' perception by the end, they said we prefer your feedback. Don't you think that personalized feedback from a human being is more important to students from a machine?
Absolutely. That's why I was very happy, and I think I was with tears. And that's also a reinforcement that ChatGPT is not going to change or substitute teachers. Teachers are still needed because you understand them at a personal level. You speak the same language that they do. You share the same culture and background. That's why it's going to be even more meaningful. But for the mechanical part, I think ChatGPT helps you a lot. Thank you so much.
True. I'm working on a paper concerning AI-driven feedback versus human-based feedback. So if we would like to collaborate, I'll be very happy. Thank you so much.
Of course, whenever you want, and just in case, this is my contact information.
Okay, let me take screenshots. Yeah.
We are recording this session as well, and it will be up on our YouTube channel in the next 24 hours.
Okay.
So in case you're able to miss it, so you can go through and refresh your memory through this session as well. Please kindly fill in the form that has been shared with you. And with your certificate, you will receive the link, Dr. Karima, about this session as well. Those who have joined late or didn't start from the beginning, you're most welcome. Please stay in touch with us, stay connected, subscribe to our link provided, and you will receive continuous updates. Thank you so much, Dr. Rizzo, for joining us today. It was always a pleasure, so informative, so effective. We have learned a lot today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I invite you to see Dr. Maria Zair next weekend. She is sharing with Bolivian teachers and students her knowledge, so please come and see her. Thank you so much, Maria. It's always an honor. And God bless you all.
Yeah, see you next week then. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. There's a link provided in the chat. If you fill in that feedback form, you will receive your certificate in next 3 to 5 working days. If you see through in the chat, there is a link. If not, I will share it again. Please fill in your details as you like on your certificate, your name and details. Here's the link again. Kindly fill in that, and you will receive your certificate of this session in next 3 to 5 working days. And if you want to be part of our presenters, please get in touch at info@educationalwebinarjam. I'll share the email as well, and write to us, and we will get back to you. Bye for now.